Hey guys, and welcome to my review of the newest horror game from Microsoft and Bloober Team, The Medium. The Medium has been an interesting game to say the least since we got our first initial reveal back in May of 2020, and the cinematic trailer that Microsoft showed off for the game actually had a lot of people wondering what exactly was this thing going to be. It looked like Silent Hill almost, and it had the same composer, Akira Yamaoka, and it was very exciting. Between the mysterious tone and the very creepy visuals that we got in that reveal trailer and that music, we're all kind of expecting something very interesting to come forward. The question is, did Microsoft and Bloober Team deliver on this next generation experience, or is it not as good as what we all thought it would be? Let's find out together. I won't be going into really large details for the story because this is the game's strongest point, and if it is spoiled for you, it really does harm the experience of intrigue and discovery while playing the game. However, the synopsis of The Medium is you play as Marianne, a young woman with the ability to glimpse into the spiritual realm. The story opens with Marianne preparing for her father's funeral. While doing the preparation, you get your first glimpse into the spirit world, and you're greeted with the game's supposedly flagship mechanic, the dual reality. During this dual reality sequence, we see the confused spirit of Jack, who is not aware he is deceased, but it's also where we discover what part of Marianne's ability is. She essentially can help aid restless spirits pass from the hellish astral plane into peace. After helping him to rest, Marianne receives a phone call from a man named Thomas. He sounds worried and as if time is running out for him, but lets her know that he can help her remember the past and discover who she is because he knows what she is. Considering she believes herself to be the only one with this power, she decides to follow Thomas's breadcrumb trail to the Niwa resort. This is where the story begins and we start to unravel the secrets of the past. So the game is intriguing to say the least, and it does have some really interesting plot twists along the way. My advice though is to expect to be mildly confused at times, since the game is a mystery and most of the characters that are introduced only have an apparition form. For me, this led to getting mixed up on which characters were being presented at certain times, and even then the game reveals its secrets slightly out of order, which can seem convoluted at times, and a few segments that break away into subplots add to the overall confusion of the story structure. By the end of the game, I did understand the events much better. However, I still looked up an explanation video just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And I'm not alone in the confusion. Many people in the comments section were in the same boat of understanding the overall story, but being slightly confused due to the presentation and the amount of information that is poured onto the player. Presentation issues aside, the game has good pacing and will keep your attention until the end, and if you're anything like me, you will be theorizing the whole time about how it's going to shake out, and you probably won't guess all the twists, which made me enjoy the game much more since the story actually did feel pretty unique. And without spoiling anything, the end does leave some room for future content to be created within the universe, so that's always a plus. So The Medium has many layers of inspiration from other cult classics in the horror genre. The aesthetic has a layer of Silent Hill, the gameplay has a layer of Clock Tower, but sadly the game lacks any layers of fear.
Wow, that joke was stupid!
I believe this is due to just a few factors, one of which is the choice of Marianne's exposition and the presentation of music. Marianne's voice actor just felt very stiff and awkward throughout the game, and the things that she says to herself when she's alone just seem bizarre.
Hey Marianne, you look like shit.
And I know, these old era horror games were a bit goofy at times with the dialogue, but still it was a strange choice in the modern era, and I couldn't really tell if they were attempting to conjure up that pretty cringe voice acting, or if the talent for Marianne just didn't deliver as well as the person who voiced Thomas. Likewise, I think the soundtrack is downmixed a little too much because there were only a few times throughout my playthrough that I actually noticed the music at all, which is really disappointing considering the legendary composer that they had on board. I mean, it is still there, and if you are a fan of Yamaoka's other work, you will surely be pleased with the music that he's crafted for the medium. Gameplay design is another contributor to the game's lack of scariness and can be boiled down to 3 simplistic elements: spooky walking simulator, light puzzle solving, and evading the monsters. None of these elements are innovative, but they function well enough and are at least not a broken, buggy mess. Sadly, the basic structure for the entire game can be broken down to this pattern. Step 1. Walk around a spooky area for a while getting awkward exposition or story revelations. Step 2. Solve a puzzle to continue on your spooky path. And Step 3. Run away from the monster either during the puzzle or shortly thereafter. It really does become too formulaic, and the lack of combat or anything truly frightening can make this game a dull experience at times, which is really disappointing because the whole concept of the astral realm and physical world bleeding in and out of each other could make for some really strong scares. And the art style, which was inspired by the Polish painter Beksinski, is eerie and unsettling, but the developers never really give any motion to the lost souls, nor do they pose any threat to the player. Since there is no combat mechanics and the few monsters in the game just chase you for a short sequence, it really depletes any sense of risk, which in turn makes the game lack fear. When you look at the game's contemporaries like Silent Hill, you have combat, which not only engages the player, but raises the intensity as you hear the static of your radio increase as a monster lurks closer. Or perhaps Clock Tower, Haunting Ground, or the many Resident Evil titles that feature stalker characters that relentlessly pursue the player, and your only option is to hide or fight, and you never truly feel safe. Bloober Team can even look to Layers of Fear, and in my opinion see a much more successful spooky walking simulator, which actually did scare me quite a few times. Bloober Team is used to making modern horror games, and I really respect them for attempting to recreate a style which we really haven't seen much since the fantastic PlayStation 2 era. However, I think their gameplay failure is mainly due to the fact that they felt the need to shoehorn the dual reality mechanic into the game, which I can only assume took tremendous amounts of work and time to make the game function properly during these sequences. These efforts, I feel, could have been better utilized elsewhere in development, and sadly the payoff of these sequences just are not there for me. Instead of splitting the screen in half and lowering the resolution dramatically, I think it would have worked better to do the trick used in the Master Chief Collection, where you have a dedicated button to switch between the original world and the spirit world. Additionally, during the cutscenes and gameplay of the dual reality sequences, I found my eyes darting back and forth between the two scenes, and it felt distracting and unnecessary. I understand the reason for this is to show off the impressive technical feats of the Series X hardware, but at what cost? Because it reduces the resolution of each scene and lowers, if not eliminates, the ray tracing effect. Not to mention, something is definitely coded poorly since the game has a lot of texture streaming problems, which is pretty unacceptable given the speed of the SSD in the Xbox console. This is sad when you consider that much of the game's environments look pretty stellar, especially the forest areas. Not to mention the ray tracing effects are great, with your flashlight casting near perfect environmental shadows. Character models can be a little hit and miss, and Marianne, in my opinion, is the strangest. Her eyes just look a little lifeless and lack subtle animation, which is strange since she is the model that you're going to be spending the most time with throughout the game. Some other characters that I won't show for spoiler reasons have much better facial animations. I did play the medium briefly on my PC, which has an RTX 3070, and it did look far superior in every way when I maxed it out, and you can choose to lower graphical settings to try to get 60 frames per second instead of the 30 that is locked on the consoles. I do say try because it still has frame time issues, and even with a very fast PCIe Gen 4 NVMe drive, I had stutters during the dual reality sequences and at other bizarre times, which I would assume is linked to the way the game works under the hood and less to do with hardware not keeping up. Really, the game overall is a mixed bag, and I think if Xbox greenlights a sequel or some sort of DLC, I hope they add some combat, drop the dual reality split screen, and really polish up the character models and texture streaming issues. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Medium stands as the first truly exclusive game for the next generation of Xbox hardware, and consequently, with that in mind, a lot rests on its shoulders. I do think the Medium is worth playing for the story alone, and especially if you like classic horror games and have Game Pass. However, it doesn't successfully install fear or evoke the same feeling I experienced when watching the reveal trailer. I mean, come on, go watch that and play the game. It evokes two totally different emotions. Likewise, it doesn't put the best foot forward for Xbox's exclusive lineup for next generation. I think it needed a bit more time to be fully realized as a standout next generation experience. With all that being said, I encourage Bloober Team, since the original Layers of Fear is a fantastic game and the Medium definitely is a work towards something great. And if you take the suggestions I've given you in this video, whatever you decide to make next could be like some of the aforementioned titles 20 years from now. Timeless and classic in the horror genre. But alright guys, that wraps up my review and my thoughts on the Medium. Let me know what you guys think of the game in the comment section down below. Please refrain from spoilers. I want people to have a good experience if they do choose to play this game. If you liked the video, please click that like button. If you disliked it, it's okay. You can click the dislike button. I understand. And just as well, if you're new here, consider subscribing if you thought this was a good review. I would like to do more in the future. Please let me know what you thought about the Medium down below. And until I see you in the next video, you guys have a good week.
Thanks for watching.